Hello and welcome to this conversation. Today I have with me Dimitris Karakasilis, one of the Kairos maintainers. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Dimitris.
You said it all. Yeah, I'm Dimitris Karakasilis. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm Dimitris Karakasilis. I'm from Greece. I work on the Kairos project since I think a little bit more than 3 years now. And before that, I used to work on other open source tools, platform as a service tools, Oasis, Cloud Foundry, and things like that. But mostly for the last more than 10 years, I think it has always been open source.
That's quite sometimes. Did you ever at some point had something closed source, we could say?
I've developed an allergy, I think. So whenever I'm creating a tool for myself, even, like a little tool, I tend to immediately make it open. But yeah, none that I remember of. Last time I worked on closed source, it was in 2013. I think the mentality around open source and the way things work suits me a lot, both as a developer, but as a consumer as well. So when I'm trying to consume something, I try to always choose open source tools because I can look in the code. So I appreciate it a lot as a consumer. That's why I prefer to create software that other people can inspect. And I rarely bother myself or my little tools about making money out of it. So there's no reason to keep it closed.
I mainly ask because in my experience, when working with something open and something closed, the way you plan for it is different, right? Like you have to keep in mind that everything you're putting out there is visible, which for some people, it can be very stressful. What's your take on that? How do you feel about the planning that we do publicly and all of that?
I think there are two levels of being open source. The first one is releasing your code under some license that people can reuse, things like that, but you can still keep all the rest in private, like do planning and all. But on Kairos, we've taken the fully open approach where everybody can contribute not only to just code and tickets and such, but even to all our calls. So we never do anything in private unless we certainly have to. If it's internal, something really internal to the company we work for, SpectroCloud. But other than that, we even keep the calls open, which is another level of one challenge, right? So for the first part, the code, it becomes a habit, I think. So it's a different thing to start from something closed source and then at some point try to open it. There's a lot you have to go through to make sure nothing slipped, no credentials, no bad practices. But if you start immediately making it open with every little pull request you make, every little contribution you do, you always make sure it's good to be in public. So it grows as a public thing. So you don't really have to worry too much. It becomes a habit. That's for the code part. But for the planning part, I think we've taken it to as far as it gets. We even record the meetings, right? Which means even if someone cannot be there in person during the call, you always have to keep in mind that they might just watch the recording and you have to accommodate for that. You just can't speak your tribal language in the call, right? Things you and your teammates only understand. You have to always keep in mind that someone watching may not even know what you're doing. So a ticket could be completely new to them. It has to come out polished, and you have to always be careful of what you say, even your process, the order of things. For example, if someone has seen the recordings there, we don't frequently get someone which is not a maintainer, but sometimes people pop up. They appear there because they have some questions. So you have to give them time to talk before you jump into your regular process. So even the order in which you discuss, you cannot be very strict about the planning. For example, I've been in companies where we did open source, but the planning was internal. So we did Scrum kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So you always have a process. You go through the board, you look at your tickets, something like what you do in Kairos. But there, if someone else comes in, they don't care about your ceremony and your processes. They need some time to speak. And if you don't give them, the opportunity for more than an hour, you've lost them and you've lost the opportunity to get their feedback and help them out, which means you have to be a lot more flexible, but still manage to do the planning in the end, right?
I guess it's also because some teams do this in separate calls, like they do the planning themselves, but they have these office hours where they let people come in. All right. But what I would like to know more your opinion about is how do you develop certain parts that are not yet finished, or when everything you do is public, how do you deal with these things that are not yet ready for public?
Well, Usually the reason I don't publicize my code is not because of the code per se, it's because I don't want people to jump right into getting that and consuming that, right? Because the API is not yet solid. So I may start with the private repo because I don't put a README there. I don't have to explain to people what this does. It's still not ready. I don't worry about putting warnings. Don't use it. It's work in progress, things like that. So it stays in private, but is worked on as being public because you know
Yeah.
you're going to open it eventually. It's just that you don't release it yet because you don't want people to consume. That's for how long I keep it in private. So yeah, I mean, usually I start with a private repo until I have a good README people can read it. I did create an e-commerce site of my own, which has no reason to be public, right? The only reason
Mhm.
to give something like that in public is for people to just copy the exact same site you created. It's
Yeah.
your content, it's your features. So it's not like an OCD that you have to put everything in public.
We have to be clear about that. Uh, there are some trade-offs of putting things in the public and not, and it doesn't mean that you always want the experience of the open source feedback that you can get from people opening
Mhm.
issues, people bringing pull requests and whatever, while many times the final product doesn't necessarily need to be open source.
I've been in a company that was very open source friendly, but the product was not public. It wasn't open source because, I mean, it would be obvious that that was their leverage. That's what they were selling, the core of the product, how smart it was. So, but they were very open source friendly with every library they had because they were consuming open source library. They appreciated that and they contributed back. So anything they could open, they opened. It's just that they kept the core value of their business in private because there was no sense in giving it away, right? That's what they sold.
That makes a lot of sense. That's another part that we need to understand. The only way we can continue doing open source if there is some way you're making money, right? And many times people don't realize how much work is put in the open source side, and that all these people working on it need to have salaries. And
Mhm.
we have these jokes or memes about how one person is maintaining something that the entire internet is
Yeah.
relying on. Um, and it's just ridiculous that we don't have a solution yet for those scenarios. At least it's my personal opinion that the Kairos project has a very healthy status in that sense. For the most part, the main maintainers, the five maintainers are working for a company, right? But they get to have X amount of time that they can work on Kairos. And the other contributions that we get are more from people who are consuming
Mhm.
it and they just need to fix a particular thing. Let's switch a bit the topic into the trendy thing that is affecting all open source, I would say, which is AI. Everyone that I talk to as a maintainer is a bit stressed about how much they are getting sloppy AI pull requests or issues and all of that. How does that feel in the Kairos project? How do you see that moving forward in the future?
Yeah. We also get, not only get from others, we also produce AI generated pull requests. There's no secret in that. I don't find it bad. But I think slowly we're finding a way to balance it. So you always start with, so you have a lot of boilerplates to be written, like you have tests and things like that. So initially it all started with, oh, I generated something, let me contribute that blindly. We're moving towards something that's a little bit different. So you ask your AI agent to do what you want. You try to contain it, give it good context to not go wild, right? You have to give it structure and then you always review. That's how we do it.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of PRs I can now start to understand that they went through this process. So by looking at the PR, you can understand whether the person that submitted it actually understands it or not. So if you go
Yeah.
through the test and see something stupid, that was AI generated, it means that the person who reviewed that should have seen that. I'm not talking about small things that could easily slip, right? I'm talking about, very, very, very big mistakes, like structural mistakes, things like that, like tests that don't actually test something. So between the two, I think I don't mind at all someone, because I do that as well, someone submitting an AI generated pull request. But when the time comes to see a huge pull request that the person that opened it hasn't reviewed, even that's annoying.
Yeah.
And we had a situation in which you had to review it, because what can you comment, right? You cannot just comment, hey, this is AI generated. Obviously your pull request was AI generated, right? So what you have to do is actually read the thing and explain why this is a bad pull request, why this is a bad contribution, and that means time. You're gonna spend time
Yeah.
arguing, and maybe even the reply that comes back is also produced by AI. And at that point, you're saying, what on earth am I doing? I mean, I have better things to do. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you don't want to push back on AI because that's the way to go, right? We're all gonna use it eventually. It's just that I like it when people appreciate your time and they spend their own time before they ask you to spend yours with their contribution.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we're lucky in that we are not a very popular project, we could say. So we're not just being thrown slop all the time. I also see it as a positive thing, especially when it comes to communication. I've seen a couple of PRs or issues that come from people that don't dominate English. But thanks to the AI, we have managed to merge those PRs. So there are many benefits I see on it. But of course, like with everything, right? If you misuse it, if your intentions are negative, of course, you can
No.
DDoS a maintainer team with sloppy stuff. And in terms of planning, how do you see it? What do you think are the challenges that we're going to get? Because if we can produce more, even with just the internal team, how does that impact our planning? Because maybe something that we should have mentioned at the beginning is that Dimitris, you are the one driving most of our plannings. Almost all of them, you do them, which it's really great job. Thank you, man. It's only if you're on vacation that someone else does it. And I think that speaks a lot for where we stand in the project. Like you've really been able to drive it the right way. But because you have that perspective, how do you feel about all the AI work and how will it impact the planning? Do we need AI planning tools also? You know what I mean?
Yeah, first of all, disclaimer, I have to say I don't think I'm good at that. I'm good enough maybe, but generally speaking, I'm impatient. So sometimes I want things to move quickly. So maybe I don't give enough time for people to even think if they had something. And because I've been in other calls in other teams, and there's a lot of time which everybody's just thinking or nothing. But here, if you watch our plans, there are no big gaps. Like you don't have enough time to think. So I think I'm not very good at that, but at least it works for us. And thank you for your good words. But on your question now, and we already discussed, I think in a call we had, like first of all, it's easier for us to build new tools because AI, right? And we actually need to, because now we get our team is not growing as fast as the code that comes in. I mean, you have to process more, and the team is still small, and we need to start automating many things. And one thing, for example, so when someone opens a ticket, they tend to assume that whoever reads it from the maintainer side understands all of it. And I have to say something clearly now. Sometimes there comes a pull request. I have no idea what it's talking about. I mean, people have found out some feature which I completely forgot through a config. They have done amazing things in their config. They have a use case I've never thought of, and all of a sudden they discovered a bug. And the report comes in very little explanation. It says, okay, I did this. There, take my config. I don't understand anything of it. And says, and that doesn't work, and here's my output. I mean, the report is fine if only I understood what they're doing, right? And AI has helped me a lot because, I mean, I can tell, hey, can you go and find what every configuration does in there and explain to me what the bug is all about? So in a sense, we already have started using it to help us out, but I think we need to do it more. It's becoming a little bit of a bottleneck to parse all the tickets, find tickets that are no longer valid, right? We have moved on, clean up the board. I mean, on Kairos right now, we have like 300 open tickets. I'm pretty sure half of them are no longer valid. They have to be closed for one reason or the other. But yeah, that's where you need help.
That's a very good point. There is stuff that is just in the icebox, but what's the reason to be in the icebox if they will never be addressed, right? Or now that we have the extra AI hands, why don't we just address it somehow? Yeah, that's a very good point. I think a lot of teams will find themselves in similar situations. I think another interesting aspect of our team is that we're not 100% cross-functional. I think we try to jump on the tickets if we can, but somehow I think each maintainer has developed kind of like expertise on some areas. And I think that's okay because of the size of a team that we are and the depth of issues that we're tackling building an immutable operating system, right? I find it strange when people expect everyone in the team is just going to be able to cover absolutely all the topics. But thanks to the AI, I have felt that I can grab more of some of the tickets that maybe I was not being able to tackle before. But a lot of it is the planning, I think. As you say, if the ticket contains everything that is needed, at least for the AI to give me the right feedback, then I can do a lot more work. Let's start closing. Maybe you can share a bit some areas in which you're excited about Kairos right now, where you think we're going to be taking it, and just some final thoughts that you might have about the planning in general.
The first thing that came to my mind was Hadron. The reason for that is that as a person, I'm not saying generally good or not. I like small things. Like I'm not the person who wants to buy a better laptop each year just to fit more things on it. I'm really happy when I get my old computer to be my daily driver because I made everything so small, right, to fit it in there. I feel it's like a success. It's efficiency the way I see it. So I really like Hadron, and I'm very excited about that because its main purpose of being there is implementing everything in Kairos, but with something as small as possible. And that's a combination I love seeing, that you take no, what's the word, like you don't lose anything. You have all of it, but as small as possible. And that's what Hadron is. And I love it. So really excited about that. And I'm really excited about seeing, you, my colleagues coming up with nice ideas. Maybe sometimes because AI enables that and allows us to build most things more quickly. But I see new ideas coming up every second week, right? And I say, oh, this is awesome. We have to do that. But then you realize we're just, a small team. We can't do everything. But it's really nice times.
I completely agree with that. I think AI has opened up a lot of possibilities. So it's exciting.
Yeah, but you can show a proof of concept, right? You jump in a Friday call and say, hey guys, look what I've built this week. You couldn't do that before. I mean, who was going to learn React JS just for a demo, right?
Absolutely. I remember that when we were deciding on what to do with the documentation, the React part was really a blocker. None of us knows React, and none of us had the time in their schedule to invest that much in a framework, because it's not something small, right? And we were opting for minimalism there, like vanilla JS or really smaller JS frameworks. But as soon as AI was good enough for it, it was like, well, why not? At the end of the day, I mean, we assessed it, right? Like, it's not what we're putting on the machines of people in production. It's just what's running on the website, right? Why not? And it turned out to be a pretty good experience, I think. Dimitris, I think this was very interesting, and we have some other upcoming sessions. The next one is going to be the Kairos operator, which I really want to ask you about, because I think it's, at least for me, is what bridges the gap between the platform and the OS being independent things to becoming this one kind of like integrated platform. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to talk about that, how you came up with that, and yeah, how you developed, what it can do. So see you in the next session.
I would love to. Thank you, Mauro.
Thanks for joining. Ciao, ciao.